My name is Daniel Price, 35, a former military search and rescue pilot, trying to build a quieter life after a crash left me grounded. I thought the Great Smoky Mountains would give me that peace, just fog, forest, and the kind of silence that drowns out memories. The Park Service placed me at Black Hollow Outpost, one of the oldest and most remote stations in the Smokies. It wasn't on most maps. The locals called it the place the fog doesn't leave. My new assignment was to monitor wildlife migration, maintain the radio tower, and log atmospheric data every night. Simple enough. Solitude didn't scare me. I'd spent weeks alone in worse places. But the drive up should have told me this was different. The road narrowed until it became little more than a scar cut into the mountain. Pines leaned close enough to scrape my mirrors. The air got heavier, colder, and by the time I reached the cabin, the sky had turned a dull silver gray, the kind of color that made it impossible to tell what time of day it was. Ranger Caldwell, the man I was replacing, was already loading up his truck. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week, eyes bloodshot, skin pale as paper. He didn't shake my hand, just stared at me for a long moment before saying, "You'll hear things calling from the fog. They sound friendly. Don't answer." I try to laugh it off. Bears, coyotes, I've heard worse. He didn't laugh. His hands trembled as he passed me the key ring. "Everything you need's in the logbook," he said quietly. "Just follow the rules." Before I could ask what he meant, Caldwell was gone, his truck disappearing down the road like it was running from something. The cabin itself was old. Dark timber walls, a metal stove, a radio that buzzed even when turned off. The windows faced a sea of mist that never seemed to move, only breathe. By nightfall, the fog thickened until the forest vanished completely. I was sitting at the desk, trying to read the logbook, when I heard it, a whistle outside the window. 3 short notes. Familiar. It was my whistle, the one we used in the service to signal for help. But I was alone. The sound came again, closer this time. Soft, careful, like someone standing just beyond the glass. The next morning, the fog hadn't lifted. It hung low and heavy across the trees, the kind of fog that seemed to move with intent, curling, dragging itself across the earth like it was alive. When I stepped outside to check the generator, the snow around the porch was marked with footprints, bare footprints, leading away from the cabin. I followed them for a few feet before they disappeared, not into the woods, not under the snow, but as if they had simply stopped existing. Back inside, I flipped open the station logbook, hoping to find a note from Caldwell. Instead, a folded sheet of paper slipped out and fell onto the desk. The ink was faded, but the title was written in sharp red strokes. Black Hollow Protocols, Night Duty. Underneath were 9 rules, scrawled in Caldwell's unmistakable handwriting. Lock both doors before 10:37 p.m. If you hear knocking afterward, do not answer, no matter how familiar the voice sounds. If the fog turns blue, turn off every light and stay silent until it fades. If the radio turns on by itself, it's not HQ. Never leave food on the porch. It's not raccoons that take it. If you see lantern light deeper in the woods, count to 50 before looking again. The lantern will be closer. Don't look twice. When the wind stops, don't breathe through your mouth. It listens for breath. If you find new footprints outside at dawn, follow them only halfway. Never say your name aloud after midnight. Something else might learn it. Leave before sunrise if the fog doesn't lift. The hollow keeps what it covers. I stared at the list, half amused, half unsettled. The first few sounded like typical mountain survival tips. Stay inside, don't wander in fog. But others felt off. Wrong, like something out of a fever dream. Don't breathe through your mouth. Don't say your own name. I almost crumpled the paper up and tossed it into the fire. But there was something about Caldwell's handwriting, the way it cut into the paper, jagged and uneven, as if written in a hurry or under duress, that made me stop. That afternoon, I tried to radio HQ to confirm shift protocols, but the line only spat static. For a few seconds, I thought I heard someone whisper on the other end, something that sounded like leave before dawn. Then silence. The clock hit 9 p.m., and the fog pressed tighter against the windows. I decided to treat the rules as a joke, a rookie initiation. I even laughed to myself as I locked the doors, muttering, "Don't say your name after midnight." Got it. Still, I pinned a list to the wall beside the door, just in case. By 10:45, I was writing the logbook when the generator flickered. The lights dimmed. The wind, constant all evening, died completely. I froze. The silence wasn't natural. It was heavy, suffocating. My ears rang in the absence of sound. Then I remembered rule number 6. When the wind stops, don't breathe through your mouth. It listens for breath. I exhaled slowly through my nose, heart pounding. Something moved outside. Slow steps, crunching the frost. Then came a single knock at the door. Knock. A second one, softer. Knock. And then a voice. Low. Familiar. "Danny, it's me. Open up." My blood ran cold. No one had called me Danny since my accident. I stared at the door, not daring to move. The voice came again, this time right against the wood, calm, patient, and impossibly close. "Danny, you left your light on." I looked up. Every lamp in the cabin was off. The third night, I stopped pretending the rules were funny. It started quiet, too quiet, even for the Smokies. Usually, you could hear the creak of trees, the moan of the wind, a coyote calling far off. But that night, the forest outside was empty of sound, like it was holding its breath. I was writing my hourly report when the first knock came. 3 sharp raps, perfectly spaced. Then a voice, soft, familiar. "Danny, it's Caldwell. Let me in." Every instinct in me wanted to move, to open the door, to check, to do something. But the way he said my name wasn't right. There was no warmth in it, no human hesitation, just imitation. I didn't answer. After a few seconds, the handle twitched. Then the voice came again, lower now, patient. "That's smart. Stay quiet." My breath caught. I hadn't made a sound. Whoever, whatever, was out there shouldn't have known that. I sat frozen for nearly 10 minutes before the footsteps moved away, crunching slowly through the snow, vanishing into the trees. When dawn finally came, I stepped outside. The snow around the cabin was covered in prints, hundreds of them, bare feet, each print perfectly identical, like the same person walking in every direction at once. That was the first night I stopped sleeping. The next evening, the fog rolled in thick and low, smothering the world outside in pale gray. The trees disappeared into it. The air smelled wet, old, like stone and rot. At 11:58 p.m., the wind died completely. The silence pressed against my ears until I could hear my heartbeat. I remembered rule number 6. When the wind stops, don't breathe through your mouth. It listens for breath. I tried to stay calm. Breathed shallow through my nose. Counted. Then I slipped. One loud exhale through my mouth. Something outside exhaled back. The sound came from right beneath the window, deep, wet, and inhuman. Like the forest itself had lungs. The hairs on my arms rose. My breath fogged the glass, and through it, I saw movement, shapes in the fog. At first, I thought they were trees shifting in the wind, but the wind was gone. Then, one of the shapes moved closer. A human outline, tall, uneven, stepped out from the mist. Then another, then a third. Dozens of them, standing between the trees, facing the cabin, perfectly still. I turned off my lamp. The darkness thickened, the fog glowing faintly from the moonlight above. I could still see their silhouettes, motionless but wrong, their limbs too long, their heads tilted slightly upward like they were sniffing for me. Then one of them stepped closer to the porch. A hand, thin, gray, trembling, pressed against the window pane. The nails were black, curling. The skin was stretched too tight over the bones. And though I couldn't see its face through the fog, I could hear it whisper, "Danny, breathe." I stumbled back, grabbing my flashlight. The beam flickered once, twice, then died. Outside, the whispering multiplied. Dozens of voices now, whispering together in overlapping tones. Some male, some female, some that sounded like me. I covered my ears and waited. It stopped just before dawn. When the first light of morning pushed through the fog, I dared to step outside again. There were footprints everywhere, circling the cabin, the same prints from before. But this time there was something else. Halfway down the path to the tree line, the prints split, one set turning back toward the cabin, the other continuing straight into the forest. I followed them halfway, just like the rules said. That's when I saw the lantern. It hung from a branch, swaying gently, about 50 yards away. Its flame glowed orange, alive, like someone was holding it. But when I counted to 50 and looked again, the lantern was closer, hanging from a tree just 20 feet ahead. There was no wind, no footsteps, just silence. I didn't count a second time. That night, I locked both doors before 10:37. I shut off every light. I sat by the window with my rifle and waited. The fog never left. And somewhere out there in the gray, something kept humming my name, low, slow, and patient. By the fifth night, the forest had learned my name. It whispered it through the fog, soft as breath, weaving between the trees. Every time I heard it, it sounded a little more like someone I loved. Sometimes my sister, sometimes an old friend. By then, sleep was impossible. The nights had become long stretches of static, fear, and waiting. Then came the crying. At first, it was faint, a woman's voice, breaking through the fog like a signal through bad radio. "Help me, please. I'm lost." It came from deep in the woods, somewhere beyond the clearing. I froze. Rule number 5. If you see lantern light deeper in the woods, count to 50 before looking again. Don't look twice. But there wasn't any light. Not yet. Just a voice. I told myself it could be a hiker. The Smokies swallowed tourists every year, and sometimes rangers were the only thing between a lost camper and a body recovery. That's what I told myself as I grabbed my flashlight, my radio, and stepped off the porch into the fog. The air felt wrong the moment I crossed the tree line. Heavier, thicker, like breathing underwater. Every sound was muted, even my own footsteps swallowed by the mist. The voice came again, closer this time. "Please, I can't find the trail." I shouted back, "Stay where you are. I'm coming to you." My voice didn't echo. It just disappeared. After maybe a minute of walking, I saw it, a lantern swinging between the trunks ahead. Its glow was soft at first, almost human. The flame pulsed gently, like it was alive, like it was breathing in rhythm with the forest itself. I called out again, "Hey, keep talking." The voice responded, trembling, "This way." The lantern swayed. I took another step, and it moved, not away but closer. The light flickered, and now I could see the faint outline of a hand holding it. Too pale, too still. Something inside me screamed to turn back. But I didn't. I blinked. The lantern was suddenly closer again, 10 feet away. Another blink, 5 feet. Then the light went out. Everything went black. The voice changed. It wasn't pleading anymore. It whispered, low, deliberate, like it was right next to my ear. "Danny." My flashlight trembled in my hand. I turned it on. The beam cut through the fog. And there it was. A face, white as bone, hollow eyes, lips cracked and pale, whispering my name with a sound like air leaking from a corpse. It wasn't moving. It was waiting. I ran. Branches whipped my arms. Snow clawed at my boots. The forest twisted around me. The trail I knew so well was gone, replaced by endless trees. I didn't stop until I saw the cabin lights cutting through the fog like a lifeline. When I burst through the door, I slammed it shut, locked both bolts, and fell to the floor. The crying started again, right outside the window this time. "Please help me." I didn't look. I couldn't. It went on for hours, soft, patient, almost gentle. Then just before dawn, it stopped. When I stepped outside in daylight, the world looked clean again. The fog was gone. The sun stretched long golden lines across the snow. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined everything. Then I saw them. Footprints. A second set, perfectly matching mine. Every step I took into the woods was mirrored by another set. Same size, same depth, except the tracks were barefoot. They circled the cabin once, then vanished behind it. I followed them around back and froze. Carved into the frost-covered door was a single word, written in something dark that looked too much like blood. "Mine." The rest of the day passed in silence. I didn't eat. I didn't radio HQ. That night, I burned the old rule sheet and wrote them down again by hand, word for word. Except this time, I added one more, in shaky pencil lines. Don't follow the crying. It already knows the way back. But even as I wrote it, I could hear it, faint, somewhere out there in the trees. Closer now. Danny. I spent most of the next day pretending to work, logging weather, cleaning gear, checking the perimeter. But my mind was somewhere else. Those barefoot footprints. That voice. The way it whispered my name like it already owned it. Every instinct from my years in the military screamed that something was wrong here, that the forest wasn't just a backdrop. It was watching. By noon, I couldn't take the silence anymore. I started digging. In the back of the supply closet, behind a stack of rusted fuel cans, I found an old metal box marked in fading red ink. Incident logs 1973 to 1991. The latch broke when I pried it open. Inside were bundles of yellowed papers, field reports, and a few Polaroids that had turned brown around the edges. The earliest entries looked routine: wildlife surveys, minor injuries, missing hikers. But the further I read, the stranger it got. Ranger Callahan, 1978, reported hearing own voice outside cabin. Found unresponsive the next morning. Ranger D. Miles, 1984, broke curfew rule. Fog turned blue. Cabin missing upon sunrise. Presumed lost. Each report ended the same way. Post abandoned until reassignment. But one file at the very bottom wasn't a report. It was a memo, handwritten in black ink, signed by someone named Ranger Harlan. The handwriting was erratic. The paper creased like it had been gripped too tightly. It read, "The hollow isn't a place. It's a mouth. The fog feeds when we break the pattern. The rules aren't protection. They're a leash." The next line was smudged, but I could still make out enough to understand. We don't keep people safe from the forest. We keep the forest safe for what's inside it. I sat there, the words burning into my brain. All this time, I thought Caldwell, the jittery, hollow-eyed man who'd handed me the keys, was afraid of the forest. He wasn't. He was afraid of what it was keeping contained. I turned the memo over. On the back, someone had drawn a crude map: the outpost, the valley, the fog line, and something marked only as the throat. A winding trail led to a clearing about a mile east of my cabin. I'd never been there. Maybe no one had since Harlan's time. I told myself I wasn't going to go looking for it. I told myself I was smarter than that. But when night fell, the curiosity itched beneath my skin like frostbite. That's when the radio turned on. A burst of static first, then a voice, calm and low, humming through the speakers. It sounded like Caldwell, but the tone was wrong. "Daniel, you've read it, haven't you?" I froze. My hand hovered over the switch. "It's hungry again," the voice continued. "The fog's getting thicker. You know what that means." The transmission cut to static. Then, just before it died out completely, I heard one more sentence, barely audible, like it was being whispered directly behind me. "It already knows your name." The cabin felt colder than before, the air too still. I checked the door locked, the windows shut, but the fog outside pressed against the glass like something breathing. When I looked closer, I saw faint fingerprints forming in the condensation. 5 long, wet smears that dragged downward, slow and deliberate. I turned away, heart hammering, and caught sight of the rules pinned on the wall. The ink had started to run, the words bleeding into one another. Only one line was still sharp. "Never say your name aloud after midnight." I hadn't, but maybe I didn't have to. Maybe something else had already said it for me. At 3:33 a.m., the cabin began to breathe. The fog outside pulsed, not drifting but beating like it had a pulse. A dull blue glow crept through the windows, thickening until it looked like liquid light. I froze. Rule number 2. If the fog turns blue, turn off every light and stay silent. But the lamps flickered on by themselves, one by one. Then the radio clicked alive with a wet burst of static. At first, I thought it was another transmission from HQ. But then I heard it. My own voice, clear, steady, calm. "Daniel." The door's open. I spun around. The front door, bolted and chained, was now cracked an inch wide. Cold air bled through it like smoke. "Daniel," the voice repeated, softer now, closer. "You left it open for me." Every light flared white, then dimmed to a dying hum. I grabbed my flashlight. The beam trembled and swept it toward the window. The forest was full of lanterns. Dozens, no, hundreds, scattered through the fog, swaying gently in perfect rhythm. For a heartbeat, they almost looked beautiful. Then one blinked out, and another, and I realized they weren't lanterns. They were eyes. The fog pressed closer, seeping through the cracks, pooling under the door. Each pulse made the air thicker. My lungs fought for breath. I stumbled toward the mirror above the sink, needing to see something human, anything real. For a moment, I did. My face stared back, pale and terrified. Then it smiled. Before I did, the reflection leaned forward, though I hadn't moved an inch. Its lips parted, and a voice leaked through the glass, muffled but clear. "The hollow remembers." A spiderweb crack split across the surface. I staggered back, but my reflection kept moving, head tilting, smile widening until it stretched too far. "You fed it," it hissed. "You spoke your name." The crack widened into a shatter, and black, wet mist poured from the mirror, the same color as the fog outside. It crawled up the walls, devouring light as it spread. The cabin groaned, not from the wind, but from pressure, as though the forest itself was leaning in to listen. My flashlight flickered once more before dying completely. Then, through the pitch dark, my own voice, from everywhere and nowhere, whispered in my ear, "Don't fight it, Daniel. You're part of the pattern now." The last thing I saw was the blue fog curling around my hands, veins glowing faintly beneath my skin, as if something inside me was starting to hum back. I woke up at dawn, my head resting on the ranger station desk. The smell of burnt coffee lingered in the air. Everything was neat, too neat. The paperwork stacked perfectly, the radio silent, the light outside gold and calm. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. Just fog, exhaustion, and paranoia. Then a knock at the open door made me jump. A young man stood there, maybe mid-20s, fresh uniform, bright eyes that hadn't yet learned fear. He smiled politely. "Mr. Price? I'm a new assignment for Black Hollow. They told me you'd walk me through the night protocols." My throat went dry. I turned toward the corkboard behind the desk, and there it was. A sheet of paper, clean, unwrinkled. The title written in bold red ink. Black Hollow Protocols, Night Duty. But something was wrong. There were 10 rules now. My pulse started to pound as my eyes traced the last line, the one written in my own unmistakable handwriting. 10. If you wake up in the office, don't go back. You never left. The young ranger stepped closer, voice uncertain. "Sir, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't answer, because out the window behind him, the fog was already creeping between the trees, blue at its edges, rolling slow and deliberate. And as it brushed against the glass, I heard a familiar voice whisper from the radio behind me. "Daniel, the door's open."